All right, so we'll welcome everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the Napa-Solano Audubon February meeting. We'd like to welcome members, families, and friends, and we appreciate you coming and tuning in. We normally have like 40 or 50 people who come, which is really fun, and we've been able to do it in hybrid format, which allows people who have difficulty traveling at night not to have to travel, which is great. Tonight's program is going to be with Nathan Pieplow, who I have met and birded with on a number of occasions, and he's a lot of fun. And tonight's talk is entitled Internet of Wings, How the Data Revolution is About to Change the Way You Bird. It's all about transforming birding with new technologies, so I can't wait to hear Nathan's talk. Before he begins, just a couple of announcements, and also I'm going to play a quick video. The first announcement is 1 month from tonight on March the 14th, we're going to be at the Benicia Public Library, and our program is on the Bluebird Recovery Program. That's March the 14th, Bluebird Recovery Program with a specialist from the university. Our April program will be Why Birds Flock with Jessica Griffiths on April 11th. And I believe, is that when you're gone, April? Yep. So we're going to try to get either this venue at the Lutheran Church or in Napa, whichever we. Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm going to get the key. Fantastic. Another really important announcement is many people may know that the winter San Francisco Bay Flyway Festival that has been held for over 20 years on Mare Island was canceled this year due to not getting organized enough, I guess, to get enough leaders, but they're trying to bring it back for one day, Saturday, March the 9th. It's going to be called Wing Migration. And it's a lot of the same people, and it's going to be spearheaded by Teresa Carr. So stay tuned. We'll post information on our website, but Saturday, March 9th might be a day that we have a lot of field trips in our area centered around Mare Island. So hopefully American Canyon Wetlands, Huchica, and other places will be able to lead walks to on that day. Citizen science research is in full blast right now. We're in the middle of National Audubon's Climate Watch research program. We had quite an adventure at both a Napa Valley State Park a couple of days back. The park was closed when we got there, and we convinced the director to let our point count go on, and even though the park was closed. And we hiked several miles up the Ritchie Trail, and at the top, there were so many trees down and redwoods down that they had obliterated the trail and were smashing into the creek. So we had to turn around and walk all the way back up on the other side of the creek, which is now a river, to do our last few point counts. But we had fun, and we've got a number of people who are going to be trained in climate research, which is going to be really fun, so that we'll have a bigger cadre of people doing those. Tom Sliker is in charge of our Bluebird Box program monitoring, and that's about to get kicked off in March. So stay tuned for any information from that. Tom has about 30 volunteers monitoring bluebirds from March till about July. So it's a very exciting work. You get to look in the box every week and see if there's eggs and if they've hatched, and how the babies are doing, and watch them fledge and fly away with their parents. It's very fun to do the Bluebird Box monitoring program. Tom and others are also in charge of weekly phenology network surveys. Every Monday, they go to American Canyon Wetlands, and I think every Wednesday to Benicia Community Park. One is in Napa County, one is in Solano County. If you're interested in joining that team, get a hold of either Tom Sliker or myself, and we can get you being part of that group that goes out once a week to survey the birds that are present and to really note the changes in migration patterns. So when birds arrive in the fall and when they depart in the spring, and what residents stay put. So that's a really fun program. Our monthly field trips are organized by Wendy Cole, Bruce Thompson, and Carol Boykin. And we just got through with a wonderful trip to the valley. We missed most of the storm on Saturday and Sunday, and had an exciting time seeing ducks and geese. We had amazingly close-up views of Ross's geese. We had probably 7 or 8 eagles in one of the refuges that were dive bombing ducks, and it was really exciting to be part of that field trip. The next trip we hope that's coming up is going to be to Bobcat Ranch. The date hasn't been set for sure because we're coordinating things with the ranch. So stay tuned for Wendy's e-blast. The important thing is our monthly trips are usually limited to 15 to 20 people, members, and they fill up almost immediately. So if you're interested in any of these trips, be sure to sign up as soon as you receive the notice. Our weekly birding trips, every week, Andrew Ford is leading a trip somewhere in Napa-Solano counties. This particular Saturday's trip is going to be to American Canyon wetlands. Andrew sends out an e-blast every single week about where the trip will be or if he's been pulled away for work so that it's canceled. So if you're interested in the weekly walks with Andrew, who is an amazing naturalist, an incredible birder, then you have to go to our website and subscribe to the email updates. So if you subscribe to that and subscribe to the field trips, then you'll get those messages from both Wendy and Bruce and Andrew. And finally, Tom Slaker, Karina Garcia, and Carol Boykin have put together a series of beginners bird walks at American Canyon wetlands. And their next beginners bird walk is this Sunday. It starts at 9, it's over by noon. So even if you're interested in watching the 49ers, you'll be home in time for the Super Bowl. So beginning bird walks, they have a lot of fun. They have 15 or 20 people who show up and they just have a great time. They had just close-up looks of a merlin last time, kestrels flying around, and the bluebirds are starting to come by and try to set up territory on the different boxes that they have at American Canyon wetlands. So don't miss out on that one. It's this Sunday starting at 9 at the American Canyon wetlands parking lot. Finally, t-shirts. We have our new Kestrel t-shirts. I should have worn mine tonight, but Pam Condos, a board member, is selling them. We actually have a button on our website where you can purchase them, and all that information goes to Pam, and she arranges to get you your t-shirt. So if you're interested in the beautiful Kestrel on your t-shirt, then go to the website and purchase your size. I realized on the appeal notice, I put it on all the sizes for the t-shirts in case you were interested in them, but I forgot to put male or female. So if you tried to sign up for a t-shirt on the appeal, you need to get a hold of Pam or myself and get straightened away which version you would like us to send to you. So last month, I challenged all birders to try to see 200 species by the end of February. Well, I got to 205 by the end of January, thanks to Lucas taking me everywhere around the state. So it's really possible. If I can do it, you can do it. So we went to Mendocino to see the Caracara. We just got to Bodega. There is a beautiful yellow-billed loon in Bodega right now. And we got great photos of the yellow-billed loon side by side with the common loon, so you can really see all the differences. It's very exciting. So meet my challenge. Try to get to 200 species by the end of February. You have an extra month, so you can do it. And if that's too high, pick another number, 100, 50, 75, whatever number works for you. But get out there and bird. That's the whole point of it. Get out there and bird.
Got the t-shirt.
Oh, here's a t-shirt.
Stand up and show everybody.
Come on over, Bruce. Bruce has our t-shirt. He's sitting here quietly. Sit in my chair, Bruce. Here's our new Kestrel t-shirt. It's a beautiful Eurasian kestrel. Anyways, those t-shirts are really nice and it's fun to advertise Napa-Solano Audubon. So the last topic before starting tonight's program is the conservation advocacy that we've been working on opposing the huge Flannery Associates development that they're hoping to put through in Solano County. This is a mega city. They've announced it at some points as 20,000 extra houses or for people. And now it's up to maybe 60 or 80,000 people they want to put in there. It's in a very remote part of Solano County. There's no water there, and it's been historic family farmland, which has been dry farmed, grazing cattle and sheep. It's also the central point in our area for any vernal pools. So there are many endangered plants and endangered animal species that frequent those vernal pools, as well as things like tricolored blackbirds, burrowing owls, wintering mountain plovers. There's a flock right now of over 40 wintering mountain plovers right dead center of where they're hoping to build these homes. So I'm going to play a very quick video for you from our Congressman John Garamendi. And just because he's pretty outspoken on this issue, hopefully I can make all the technology work. And I'm going to just play a couple minutes of his talk regarding this project. The people in charge of the Flannery, who secretly purchased land for over 5 years and did all kinds of surreptitious things, forcing farmers to try to sell their land. It is completely counter to the long-term planning that exists for that county. So I'll let Mr. Garamendi tell you about it. So let's see if I've got it here.
Did Bill Dodd though, or no?
Bill Dodd is the one who sponsored it, but there we go. Here's Bill Dodd, and he's turning the program right now over to John Garamendi, who's about to speak.
Associates is not to be trusted. For 5 years, I've represented Travis Air Force Base. Some of the very first property that was purchased by Flannery Associates was around Travis Air Force Base. And we could not find out who was buying the property, where the money was coming from. And we knew at that time that there was Chinese money that was buying around another critical Air Force base in North Dakota. And we had great concern that perhaps this purchase would somehow harm a fundamental national security asset, Travis Air Force.
Because that seems to be what you're
We
describing. I
actually
mean,
had
I'm
to
not a
go to
farmer,
the
but
Treasury Department after 4 years of trying to find out what in the world is going on. As more and more land was being purchased, we finally went to an organization called CFIUS, which is a foreign investment review. We asked the FBI and the Treasury Department, what is going on here? They began an investigation. And then at that point, Flannery Associates came forward and said, oh, not to worry. This is all about a bunch of Silicon Valley billionaires that want to build a new city. We go, a new city? Where? Between Fairfield and Rio Vista. Are you kidding me? You're going to build a new city underneath the windmills? You're going to build a new city over abandoned gas fields and endangered species, and you're going to build
Maybe he was invited.
I have no idea what he's doing, none.
Well, if you find it, I'm sitting right here and I can stand up and walk over.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mark, we've lost the sound.
orderly growth. We in Solano County will grow in our existing cities. That's where the growth will take place. We're going to have a green belt. We're not going to have urban sprawl from San Francisco all the way to Roseville. And they have voted 3 times
Yeah.
over 30-some years to do that. And now Flannery and Associates comes up with a new name, California Forever, comes up with a bunch of wonderful ideas that very much remind me of Walt Disney's Main Street in Anaheim, California. It's going to be a happy, wonderful place with all kinds of great things, probably including Tinkerbell and Goofy we know is in place. It makes no sense whatsoever. Who's going to pay for this? Who's going to pay to upgrade Highway 12, which is already congested? And Highway 13 is a grade D rural road. Where's the water coming from? Senator, you're absolutely right. There's no water here. They're going to have to take water out of the Delta, or they're going to have to take water away from somebody to build a 400,000 person city. Give me a break. This is utter nonsense, and it will be a financial disaster for Solano County. They say, oh, not to worry, we'll protect Travis Air Force Base. Hey, I read the fine print, fellas. I read the fine print in your initiative. You say Travis is protected. Yes, from what? Well, not from development that is supportive of the purposes of Travis Air Force Base. What could that be? Manufacturing? Possibly. Could that be logistics? Possibly. But you look at all of the infrastructure that has to be made and you say, guys, this makes no sense. The voters of Solano County, I am confident, will see through this scam, this boondoggle, and they'll say, fellas, you made a bad investment. You made a bad investment here. You're not going to put houses underneath windmills. You're not going to build 400,000, a city of 400,000 people, and we're not about to pay for it. So no to the initiative.
Thank you, Congressman.
So I hope that
We're gonna switch
yes,
gears entirely
I'm
again.
gonna
We have
try to
Sandy
figure out how
online.
to turn this off. There we go. So that's John Garamendi. I believe he's a Congressman, John Garamendi, U.S. Congress, and talking about why this project in Solano County it makes no sense. First of all, there's no water. Second of all, it's right near a huge Air Force base, which requires security and no one within quite a few miles of it. And one of the big fears is they'll shut down the Air Force base if they put in a large city that close to it. So we're hoping that the citizens of Solano County who may be voting on a proposition this November, yay or nay in favor of this project, will vote it down. It goes against all of the long-term planning, which basically has said we want slow growth and we want them slowly expanding the footprint of the cities, but we want to protect the historic farmland. So that is their long-term growth plan, a 30-year plan that's been in place for quite a few years. So we're hoping that the citizens will think twice and not vote for this major mega city that's been proposed for Solano County. So with that, I would like to introduce our speaker. Let's see if I can close this down. There we go. I would like to introduce our speaker, who is Nathan Pieplow. The first time I ever met Nathan was at the Western Field Ornithological Conference in Ventura, and he had the privilege of providing a birding sound quiz for all the participants. And we all broke into teams. And of course, we were trying to beat Lucas's team, and Lucas's team shattered everybody. And it came down to the final vote. And he played a snippet of a Western flycatcher. Was it Cordilleran or was it Pack Slope? And at the time, they were two separate species. Now they're the same. And we weren't quite sure which it was, so we wrote down western flycatcher, which today would have been correct, but Lucas's team picked Cordilleran and won the contest, so. But it's a very entertaining thing. Nathan came back and did another birding song challenge at the Central Valley Bird Conference in November. And the Central Valley, he's been back, I think, many times to both of those organizations, as well as many others. He's an expert on bird songs. He is a teacher at the University of Colorado in not Boulder, but the other place. I'll let him tell
Boulder.
you. Oh,
Boulder.
in Boulder. Okay. And he teaches rhetoric. So he's an English professor, the kind that was probably challenging to get through because you had to do a lot of writing for him. But now he's also a sensational birder. And he's working actually with one of Lucas's friends who went to that to the University of Colorado at Boulder. So without further ado, Nathan, please let us know about anything that you need to, and we're going to turn the program over to him. So I think if you share your screen, it should pop up.
And here we are.
Perfect. The
All
technology
right.
works.
So what if your phone could actually identify and detect birds for you? I mean, actually, it already can do a lot of identifying birds for you, but what if it could do some of the detecting too? And what's in the future of what our phones are going to be able to do? That's what I'm here to talk about tonight. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me back. I believe this is my second time talking to you all. Yeah, I will be, as Mark said, I come back to the Western Field Ornithologist Conference every year. I will be down in San Diego in October, and there will be another sound quiz down there if you are in the area. So today, in case you didn't see the bird that is on the screen already, look for it and see if you can find it with your naked eye before the phone comes and finds it. It's tough to do, but it's sitting there right in plain sight. And in the future, our phones are going to have even more capabilities. Our technology is going to have even more capabilities than it currently does. And that is going to change not only science, but also the way that we enjoy birds and go birding. So let's see if we can get this to go here. When you make your PowerPoints a little too fancy, sometimes they don't quite obey. There we go. So I'm going to start with the story. This story starts on April 14th, 2021. As Mark told you, I live in Boulder County, Colorado. I'm a member of a text chat for Boulder County birders. So whenever something rare shows up, it comes to my phone. In April 2021, I was actually in Texas, but my phone lit up and somebody from back home in Boulder County said, "Hey, I'm out in this field near Longmont in Boulder County, Colorado, and there are 14 long-billed curlews in this field." That was a high count for Boulder County. We had never had that many curlews in one place. Long-billed curlews are rare migrants in Boulder County. We usually get one or two in a year. Maybe there might be two or maybe three ever in the same spot. For there to be 14 in one spot was remarkable. So, but I didn't go to see them because I was in Texas. So I went about my business, and about an hour later, I got another text saying, "Hey, I'm out here looking at these curlews, and now there's 35 of them." And an hour later, somebody said, "Actually, there's more like 75 curlews in this field." And about an hour and after that, somebody said, "I'm counting 115 curlews." in this field. It was a rainy, weird kind of spring snowstorm. And everybody thought, huh, well, I don't know what's going on with these birds, but this crazy snowstorm brought 113 more curlews to Boulder County than had ever been seen in one place at one time. This just kind of lodged in my head, and I went about my business for a couple of months. And then I went up that summer to visit my friend Andy Boyce, who works as a biologist up on the American Prairie Preserve in Northeast Montana. Part of his job is to capture and tag long-billed curlews and track their migration. Here he is with one of his birds. And I was talking to him and I said, oh, I have a curlew story for you. And I told him about the 115 curlews in Longmont. And he looked at me and he said, one of those was one of my birds. And he showed me the track, and this one of these birds that he had tagged that earlier that year or the year before in Montana was migrating north with other curlews in April 2021. And they passed over Colorado and got up to north of Cheyenne, Wyoming, where they hit this spring snowstorm. And then those birds turned around and flew 75 miles back south and dropped themselves in Boulder County, where they stayed for about 24 hours before the weather cleared and they continued farther north. The only reason we know that is because Andy happened to have put these tracking devices on one of these birds. Otherwise, the story of those curlews would have been a whole bunch of curlews flew north, hit a storm, dropped down, and got stranded by the storm. What we know now is actually that it was even more amazing than that. Those birds flew way farther north and then realized that the storm wasn't going to stop, and then they flew back south 75 miles before then waiting out the storm and continuing north. This is the difference between what tracking can tell us and what birding can tell us, what eBird kind of data can tell us. And so that's kind of what I'm here to talk about tonight. There's this thing in the world called the Internet of Things. You may have heard of it. It's all of these devices that you own that are attached to the internet. So for example, smart speakers, your fitness tracker, remote appliances, and apparently there's this thing called smart toilets. I don't know what they actually do. But all of these devices in your home nowadays are connected to the internet, and they're uploading data and downloading data, and it's supposed to make your life easier. Well, nowadays we have the Internet of Wings, and that's what I'm here to talk about tonight: remote sensing and identification of birds. These technologies that have just come along in the past couple of years that are changing the way that we interact with birds. I'm going to talk primarily about two kinds of technologies tonight: tracking tagged individuals, like that curlew, and computer identification, which we'll spend some time on as well. When we get to the end of the talk tonight, we'll open it up for questions, and then I'll be happy to talk about any questions you have about either of these technologies. One of the reasons that this technology is important is because birds are in trouble. You probably know this, but a lot of people don't. When I say birds are in trouble, I mean that we've lost 3 billion birds in the past 50 years. And in particular, we're losing grassland birds at the highest rate. Grasslands are the most endangered type of ecosystem in North America, and the birds that specialize in North American grasslands are declining faster than any other birds. I talked with Brant Ryder. He is one of the chief scientists at the Bird Conservatory of the Rockies. And he told me the biggest challenge we have faced historically in bird conservation is that birds move. So if you want to conserve birds, you're talking about conserving their habitats. But you can't simply go to North Dakota and conserve a patch of prairie there where Baird's sparrows and Sprague's pipits breed and then expect everything to be hunky-dory. Because birds are almost constantly on the move. And that goes double for grassland birds, which are nomadic and have to move around from year to year, and both on their summer grounds, their migratory grounds, and their wintering grounds. They have to change where they are from one year to the next based on conditions. What you're seeing here on the left is an animated data visualization of the migratory paths of 118 different bird species. This is from eBird data, and each dot there is the average location of all the members of one species on the 365 days out of the year. If you watch this animation for a lot of different repetitions, you'll learn a few things. One of the interesting things you'll learn is that the birds that spend the summer farthest north tend to spend the winter farthest south. They tend to migrate the longest distances. But one of the points that I like to say that this chart makes is that birds don't simply spend half the year one place, take a quick commute to another place, and then spend half the year there. They're in almost constant motion, seeking out the right areas for them and the right resources. And they don't see those borders that we've drawn on this map. We've divided this hemisphere up into, 50 different countries, but this is one interconnected hemisphere, one ecosystem, and the birds don't recognize our boundaries. If we're able to track individual birds, we can learn things that are absolutely crucial to conserve their populations. If we can link populations from the breeding grounds to the wintering grounds, then we have a really powerful way to know where we should be focusing our conservation efforts. Here's an example, an image created by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. The Appalachian population of golden-winged warblers, which is highly endangered, flies down across the Caribbean and winters in Venezuela, whereas all the other golden-winged warblers, the larger population in the US, winters in Central America. Two different wintering areas, two different migratory routes. If we don't conserve them both, we're not going to keep them both. What Brandt wants, and what all conservationists wants, is what's called spatial prioritization. Enough information about where individual birds go throughout the year that we can identify their migratory hotspots, their stopover sites, and bottlenecks that they move through, so that we know where to focus our time, our effort, and our money in conservation. This could change the way we do conservation because we have limited time, we have limited money, and we have limited funds, limited capabilities. And so we need to be able to direct our efforts where they're going to do the most good. Notice over here on the left, we have a graphic that was created that seeks to identify the most important migratory stopovers for birds moving between South America and southeastern North America every year. And this is great. This is important data, but you'll notice a few things about this map. It was created from eBird data, not from tracking. eBird data is less accurate. And if you look carefully at this map, you'll see that those really bright white spots that appear to have the greatest migratory stopover importance also happen to be Metro Houston and Metro Atlanta. And I strongly suspect that those are not actually our most important stopover sites for migratory birds. I suspect that's where we have the most eBirders. And so that's where we have the most observations of rare species. Tracking could actually do a lot better job of telling us where these birds are actually spending their time. So let me tell you a little story about one of Andy's curlews. This is not the same curlew that we talked about earlier. This is another curlew that he nicknamed Marlowe. And he put a tag on Marlowe in the early summer of 2020 up there in Montana. Marlowe was hanging out on the American Prairie Reserve for most of the summer, just wearing that tag, breeding, doing what he's going to do. And then on, let's see now, at 1 o'clock in the morning on July 10th, 2020, Marlowe took to the air. In the middle of the night, he flew nonstop down all the way through eastern Montana. At 7:30 in the morning, 6.5 hours after leaving the American Prairie Reserve, he reached the Montana-Wyoming border. Stayed in the air until 4 p.m. that day when he crossed into Colorado. By 11:30 p.m. that night, he had reached New Mexico, the Colorado-New Mexico border. He actually stopped on the ground for about 45 minutes in Colorado, apparently because of weather. But other than that 45-minute stop, this is a nonstop trip. He arrived at 7 a.m. on the next day down there at a spot in southeastern New Mexico. In other words, he flew 1,046 miles in 30 hours, again, with just one brief stop on the ground. And then, surprisingly, he spent 13 days in one field in southeastern New Mexico, and then spent 12 hours flying the rest of the way south to where he spent the rest of the winter in Mexico. The exact route that this bird took is interesting, but what's most important is knowing that this bird didn't fly all the way without stopping. He stopped for 2 weeks at one place in southeast New Mexico that we did not even know was important to curlews. Here's the track of that bird in those 2 weeks. So the purple dots with the black centers are location fixes for Marlowe the curlew. You can see him flying in from the north, and then you can see a whole bunch of dots just northeast of the town of Tatum, where he spent most of those 2 weeks. And then at the end, you can see him flying out to the southwest. So that's 2 weeks worth of pings for this bird. And I superimposed this on the map of eBird hotspots. You can see there's a couple of eBird hotspots right in the town of Tatum. There's none of the eBird hotspots where this bird was actually spending its time. And this is not a very well-birded area of the country. And that bird was not detected. No long-billed curlews were reported in this county during the time that Marlowe was there, from 13 to 26 July 2020. So here's a bird that almost certainly was not alone, spending 2 weeks of his migration in this very small area of New Mexico, probably with a whole bunch of other curlews, probably filling up on a lot of food, and then went the whole rest of the way, 12 hours all the way down to southern Chihuahua to spend the rest of his winter. If we were going by eBird data, we would have never known that this area was important to curlews. This is the kind of information we need if we're going to save bird populations. Here's the trouble, though. The only reason we know about curlews is because they're big. They're big enough birds that they can carry those huge GPS tags that are like an onboard cell phone. We need smaller and much more lighter weight tags if we're going to track any kind of smaller bird than that. Now we have these things called MODIS tags. MODIS tags can be made small enough to track bumblebees and butterflies. So now finally every bird species that migrates has the potential to carry one of these tags. Here you can see a black-throated blue warbler And he's wearing a Motus tag. That's the Motus tag right there in the center of his back, that little white thing. And it's got a wire sticking out. It's hard to see there. That runs down through his tail and past the end of his tail. The bird is wearing a little nylon backpack that goes kind of over his wings and underneath his legs and holds that tag to his back. Here's the thing about these Motus tags. They are actually just sending out a little ping every 30 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever you set them to. And you need towers to pick up those pings in order to be able to track these birds. Motus tags can be battery powered or solar. The battery powered ones can last up to 300 days, pinging every 30 seconds. And the nice thing about them is that they will ping even when it's dark, even when it's rainy. Whereas the solar ones last longer than 300 days, so you can actually track a full year cycle of migration. But they don't ping in the dark. They don't ping when it gets really rainy. So you miss things with the solar tags. Here is a Baird's sparrow that I helped band on January 1st of this year, 5 weeks ago. I was down in Marfa, Texas, in West Texas, and Bird Conservancy of the Rockies has a banding operation down there. The guy holding the bird there is Josh Lefevre, who runs that banding operation. They were kind enough to let me come out and help for one day as a volunteer. I did not get to hold this bird or put the tag on it. That's for experts. But I did get to help flush this bird into the net. And I was able to take these photos. Over there on the right, you can see the Motus tag on the back of the bird. Notice that on this photo and also on the earlier photo, we had to rearrange the feathers on the back of the bird so that you could see the tag for the image, for the photograph. And then we would lay the feathers back over the tag so that the tag is not visible. And we do that because otherwise the bird would get cold. If there's a hole in its coat of feathers, we need the tag to be under the feathers so that the bird can stay warm. Over there on the left photo, in the side view, you can get a good view of that wire that runs from the tag all the way across the front of Josh's coat and down over his hands and off the edge of the photo there. That wire is about twice as long as the bird is, but it weighs almost nothing and it's almost too thin to see. And that's the antenna that helps this tag send its message to a longer distance. These tags are lightweight enough that they can be carried by these birds without any difficulty. We only put tags on birds if the tag is less than 3 or 4% of the body weight of that individual. And the little backpacks that they wear are designed to eventually wear out so that after this tag runs out of battery or stops functioning, eventually the backpack will fall off the bird and the bird won't have to wear this tag for the rest of its life. There are 2 companies that make these Motus tags. And the bad news about that is that for maximum impact, a Motus tower that picks up these signals actually needs to detect both kinds of tags. And they ping on different frequencies. So that means you need different antennas. Makes it a little bit more challenging to create the towers in order to make sure that you can track both companies' tags. The limiting factor right now on how useful these Motus tags are is how many towers we have. Because we only get a signal from these birds when the bird is in range of a tower. As of today, on the Motus website, this is what the map of towers looks like in the United States. This is significantly better than it looked like 3 years ago when I started giving this talk. My home state of South Dakota had 0 towers until last year. And you can see that we've already got up to 6 towers in South Dakota now. Mexico had almost no towers 3 years ago. They're really starting to come online down there. The Intermountain West has just exploded with towers, but you can see that where Motus started in Ontario and then spreading into the Northeast, they have way better coverage. In parts of Ontario and Pennsylvania, there are areas where a bird cannot get out of range of a Motus tower. Every bird is being tracked all the time, and that is definitely not the case in the West, as you can see. So one of the things that I think conservationists can do, people who are interested in helping bird research and bird conservation, one of the best things we can do is to support the build out of this tower network. We're putting up new towers all the time. Bird Conservancy plans to put up almost 100 new towers this year, but we're still going to need more. What can we learn from these towers? Here's a map of Montana, central Montana, the towers that were up 3 years ago. Each tower is a little yellow dot on this map, and you'll see that from each dot, you'll see these kind of yellow petals, making it look like yellow petals of a flower sticking out from each dot. The dot is the tower, and those petals are the range that the antennas on that tower can detect tags. So you'll see that depending on how many antennas there are on each tower and which direction they're pointing, you can see that we can detect birds in these kind of cross patterns, so that if a bird comes into range of one of those petals, it'll get detected. Over there south of Missoula, there's a private ranch that has a whole bunch of Motus towers. They've gotten really into the Motus tower thing. And there was a common nighthawk that they banded there and put a tag on July 12th. I believe this was the year 2021. And that they tagged it there on July 12th, and it spent the rest of the summer dutifully pinging those towers all around the ranch for weeks. At 6:30 p.m. on August 30th, it pinged a tower on that ranch for the last time. At 5:30 a.m. the next morning, it pinged one of Andy's towers out on the American Prairie Reserve in Phillips County. So that means that this individual common nighthawk flew 11 hours, went 250 miles east-northeast. You would think that when a bird starts to migrate, it would go south. This bird went northeast. We don't know where it went after this. We just got the one ping, and then the bird disappeared. So it was on its way somewhere. Where it went after this, we don't know, because we don't yet have enough towers to be able to really accurately track birds like this. But we do know that this bird did not do something that we expected it to do. And there's a whole bunch more discoveries like this to be made if we can put more Motus towers on the landscape. We're going to circle back and maybe talk a little bit more about Motus towers later. But let's talk about some of these other technologies that are coming along or already here. For one thing, what if your phone could alert you when a rare bird is nearby? Not just because somebody saw it and reported it, but because your phone can actually track those individual birds. Well, we're pretty close to getting there. This is an interesting project that was crowdsourced a couple of years ago. It is now a thing you can purchase if you want, this thing called Terra. It is a little device that you place in your yard. It's got microphones and things in it, but one of the things that it has is it has a little radio receiver to detect CTT Motus tags. Not both companies, just one of the companies, but it will detect these tags, which means that you can actually purchase this and put this in your yard. And if a bird wearing a CTT Motus tag flies over your yard, you can get an alert right to your phone saying this bird was just detected flying over your yard or in your yard. They've got an app that you can use to connect to the device in your yard. It'll let you like listen to the birds in your yard without being in your yard. And it'll also like let you know what radio tag birds pass near your house. Here, there's got to be a catch, right? There's a couple catches. We don't know exactly. I don't know exactly. The Terra project hasn't publicly said yet what their range of detection is, but based on the specs we were seeing earlier, their range of detection is probably only about 250 meters. That's not a great radius, and in particular, some like nocturnal migrant birds flying over your house may actually come over your house higher than that. So a bird could fly directly over your house and still not be detected if it's going high enough. That 250 meter radius also assumes that you have perfect line of sight, no structures blocking it. Whereas those big Modus antennas that we were looking at on the map, they can detect birds out to 15 or 20 kilometers in the long direction, the direction the microphone is pointing. And it, as I said, I believe it only detects tags from cellular tracking technologies. The same people who run cellular tracking technologies are the same people who created Terra. However, the price is $219 versus $5,000 to $10,000 for one of those big towers we were looking at on the map. A powerful station that can detect all tags out to 15 or 20 kilometer radius. For that, you need several grand. Let's talk a little bit about not just remote sensing, but automatic identification of birds. You're probably familiar with an app called Merlin Bird ID, where you can upload photos to your phone and it will identify those photos for you using artificial intelligence. This has been out for several years. It's pretty good. In case you're unaware, Merlin Photo ID can identify some birds pretty consistently that are kind of difficult for a lot of us humans to identify by eye. For example, it's got a really good accuracy with lesser versus greater squawk, for example. There's also Merlin Sound ID. And Merlin Sound ID just came out a couple of years ago, and it has become very popular. I'm guessing a lot of you have heard of it. A lot of you have used it. If you are interested in having your phone identify birds for you, this is the best app on the market by a lot. And it will get better over time. It's not perfect, but if you know how what its strengths and its weaknesses are, it can be a really excellent tool. I do a lot of earbirding and a lot of sound recording, and I use Merlin Sound ID regularly, both for recording. This is typically the way that I will record sounds if I'm recording them with my phone, and also for double checking identifications that I'm not 100% sure about. Like many people who have reached their late 40s and beyond, I'm losing my high-pitched hearing. Sometimes my phone has better ears than I do. And I can see spectrograms on Merlin that I couldn't necessarily see without a phone. And I can get confirmation on certain sounds that I'm not great at. So Merlin does not identify every single bird. I have not been able to get an updated number. I think the number is a little higher than this. I think it's just over 500 now, but I'm not entirely certain. As of a couple of years ago, it identified 458 species in the US and Canada. That's good, but it's not everything. And if Merlin doesn't know a species, it's just never going to detect it. It's just never going to tell you that it's there. It's just going to be blank when that bird is singing. Merlin is pretty good on most of the land birds. It's not good at things like ducks or shorebirds or herons or cormorants or any other birds like that, even though many of those birds actually have very distinctive vocalizations and by rights could be identified by the app. Interestingly, the way that Merlin Sound ID actually works is that inside the app, it generates a spectrogram, which is a computer-generated image of a sound. And then it actually identifies the sounds from the visual spectrogram. So it's matching visuals. It's turning the sounds that it hears into visuals and then identifying the visuals and then giving you the identification of the sound as a result. In order to train the AI to do this, humans like me have to go into recordings on eBird and draw boxes around them in this special software and then teach Merlin which species is which. And this is how Merlin ends up learning all of these bird sounds. So like I said, it's actually matching sounds visually. That is the exact same way that Siri and Alexa and other apps recognize your voice. They are also making spectrograms of your voice and then matching that to their training. If you know a lot about bird sounds and you are interested in volunteering for this project and helping to be one of the people who draws these boxes and identifies these birds, you can volunteer. The project is called Merlin Vision. It's run by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. If you're interested, you can get in touch with me. I can put you straight in touch with the people who run it, or you can go straight to the Merlin Vision website just by doing a search, and you can volunteer there as well. They are now doing Merlin Vision training for regions all around the world. The US and Canada is just one region. They're doing it in Europe. They're doing it in Mexico. They're doing it in a bunch of different places now, trying to teach all the world's birds to Merlin. Notice that back when the Merlin Vision website was operating properly, it hasn't been operating properly for months now. So this list of species is not currently visible there. But it should be visible, and it should show you all the species that they are currently training on and how many annotations, how many recordings they have. So a couple of years ago, this is what the website looked like. And you can see there the number of recordings that they have gone in and drawn boxes for. Merlin cannot reliably identify a bird species until it has been trained on at least 100 correctly identified recordings. So you can see there that there were a couple of species as of a couple of years ago that were not quite yet at that threshold. As of a couple of years ago, only about 1,700 species worldwide had 100 recordings in eBird. That includes most of the species in North America, but once you get outside North America, it's going to be hard to train Merlin unless we are uploading a lot more recordings than we currently do. Currently, people who use eBird upload approximately 30 times more photographs to their eBird checklists than they upload sound recordings. This despite the fact that sound recordings are more scientifically valuable. So I would strongly encourage you to make recordings with your phone and upload them to eBird. We'll talk even more about that in a minute. When the Merlin Vision website is functioning, you can actually go and see the performance rating for each species. It'll tell you which species it's good at identifying and which species it's least accurate at identifying. You want that number to be up around 100 for an accurate identification. However, it's not just a percentage. It's not that Merlin was 48% of the time correct in identifying American black ducks. Performance is a combination of two different numbers, one called precision and the other one called recall. Precision is when it says Sora, is there a Sora? When Merlin tells you there's a Sora, is there actually a Sora there? And recall is if there's definitely a Sora there, does Merlin tell you there's a soror there. And so those are also known as type 1 and type 2 errors. They get combined into the performance rating for Merlin. You want performance ratings up around 70 or higher in order for Merlin to be considered a good performer. As of the time when I took this screenshot, you could see that all the birds listed here, Merlin was not doing a very good job of identifying. So as of the creation of this screenshot, quite a few had a performance below 70 out of the 458 species that Merlin supposedly can identify. A lot of times that's because birds like, you'll see birds like northern mockingbird there, Baltimore oriole, red crossbill. These are birds that are extremely variable, that have lots and lots of different sounds they make. So the issue is that for those species, it's going to take a lot more than 100 recordings to teach them properly. And then for other species like American black duck, rock pigeon, yellow-bellied sapsucker, the issue is simply that people don't point microphones at those species often enough because they're not considered to have interesting songs. So that's another reason why it's important to make your own sound recordings and upload them. This is what the interface actually looks like if you're a Merlin Vision volunteer and you go in and you actually are drawing those boxes and teaching Merlin how to identify them. If that is not your jam, then I would recommend just recording. Because if we had enough recordings, we could do some really amazing things with science. For example, we could pinpoint the breeding grounds of any singing white-crowned sparrow. As you probably know, white-crowned sparrows sing all year round. They sing all winter when they're in their wintering flocks. And white-crowned sparrows typically sing one song each. Each individual white-crowned sparrow just knows one song, and it sings that exact same song its whole life. It learned that one song from its neighbors on its first spring breeding territory. And then it's going to go back and breed in that same territory, if it can, year after year after year. White-crowned sparrows famously have pretty small geographic song dialects. So all up and down the California coast, if you move anywhere from 10 miles to even sometimes as little as 2 miles, you will cross an invisible line in the sand and the song of the white-crowned sparrows will suddenly change. On the other side of that line, they all sound a little bit different. If we actually had a complete sample of all the song types from all the breeding regions of white-crowned sparrows, we could pinpoint probably within 30 to 50 miles where every single bird spends its summer. Whether that bird is wintering, whether you're recording it on the wintering grounds in Arizona or in Texas or in Colorado, we could tell where they all go back and spend their summers without having to band them, without having to put tags on them, just by listening to their dialects. We can already do this with golden-crowned sparrows. And Ed Pandolfino and some of his collaborators already did this work. Another set of Shizuka and some other people did the original map. They went to the breeding grounds and got all the dialects of golden-crowned sparrows. And then Ed and some other people went into the wintering populations in California and started to match where the wintering populations are to which of these songs they sing, which means where they bred. As you can see from golden-crowned sparrows, it's not going to be as accurate because golden-crowned sparrow dialect regions are hundreds of miles across, as opposed to tens of miles across for, or even single miles across for white-crowned sparrows. So it varies from species to species how much accuracy you can bring to bear on song tracking. But there are lots of other birds like this that we could track with great accuracy. Leisurely bunting is similar to white-crowned sparrow. One song per person, one song per bird, I should say, and regional dialects on the order of 5 or 10 miles across. Indigo bunting, same thing. There are lots of birds we could do this with, but we need more people uploading recordings from wherever they go. Ultimately, what I've been calling the Internet of Wings tonight is about connections. It's about connections between birds on their summer grounds and on their wintering grounds. That's been a repeated theme tonight, but it's also about connections between us and the birds. If we know that the birds are in the area, if your phone will tell you when a bird shows up, or if it will identify that bird for you, either by sight or by sound, all of a sudden you're more tied in to the natural world. I have friends who are not birders at all who have gotten into using Merlin Sound ID because they love knowing what species are in their backyard. They themselves had no idea what a red-eyed vireo was until they started listening to their own birds using this app. And I'll get texts from them, excited texts from them when they find new birds, even though they are not quote unquote birders. But this is a way of getting people interested about the nature that's around them. Another quote from Brandt: the whole point of everything that we're doing, we want to be able to go to landowners and say, hey, look at all the birds that moved through your property, to get people excited about conservation. That's what we can do by tracking the birds. That's what we can do by automatically identifying them. Go to people who normally are not interested and get them interested. Bring it home to them. Talk about what's in their yards, what's in their city parks. And you can help. So I've been talking a little bit tonight about the Bird Conservancy of the Rockies. This is a nonprofit organization. I am on the board of directors. It's based here in Colorado, but it works all the way from Canada to Mexico. Does a large amount of the bird surveying that happens in the middle of the country, and is probably one of the premier organizations working on grassland bird conservation. Bird Conservancy is a great resource if you are interested in helping to set up more Motus towers in the Western US. The Motus towers are going to be an absolutely wonderful resource because they're going to help all sorts of research. If you put up one Motus tower, it'll detect any creature that flies by with a tag on it, whether that's a dragonfly or a bat or a bird. And all of that data then goes onto the web, and it goes back to the researchers who put the tags on those animals. And so you can help all sorts of different research studies just by putting up one tower. If you go to motus.org, it can talk to you about if you want to host a station, if you want to build it yourself, they'll teach you how to do that. If you want to buy the components and put them up yourself, it'll teach you how to do that. But I think that one of the things that I think is a little bit more realistic for most of us is to get together in groups like local Audubon chapters and say, hey, as a chapter, we should put up a Motus tower, because if it costs between $5,000 and $10,000 for the fully souped up model, that's usually right in the area that like a local Audubon chapter can actually raise that money. It's a little bit pricey for one person usually, although if you've got the money, go for it. But this is a great thing for local Audubon chapters to do. And I would love to see collaborations. You know, when you're going to put up a Motus tower, you need a place to put it. Usually some kind of existing structure to mount it on so that it has good height above the ground, so that it has a good line of sight to the horizon. Why not put them up on top of high schools and then help the high school science classes actually be responsible for tracking the data? Homeschool groups, you know, are other groups that of young people who could get involved in maintaining these towers and maintaining the data from these towers. Because when you set up one of these Motus towers, you can't just like turn it on and then forget about it forever. It requires some maintenance. It requires you to kind of keep track of some of the data, register it on the internet network. If it goes down, you have to go back and repair it. it takes some time and some money ongoing. Andy told me when I talked to him, let's partner with high schools in the Great Plains. Have them put up a tower on the high school, get a teacher involved who can help maintain the tower, bring the data to the kids. And Andy said, loop the researchers in. People like me will come down and talk to the kids too. You know, so there are all sorts of people who, if we actually created these kinds of programs, we could get the scientists and the high schoolers and the birds all connected. I think that's really exciting. Groups can provide better maintenance than individuals can for towers that need to be maintained over the long term. And if you are interested in doing something like this, I would recommend contacting Matt Webb. And there's his email there, and there he is with another Baird sparrow wearing a Motus tag in a recent photo. So I would like to thank all the people that I interviewed in order to put this talk together. Andy, Drew, Matt, and Brant at the American Prairie Reserve, Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and Bird Conservancy of the Rockies. And I would like to thank all of you for having me. And I would like to open it up now for questions. Nathan?
There we go. So I have a couple things, Nathan, related directly to what you said. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, so on our last field trip to the Sacramento Wildlife Refuges, one of our trips was led by a director from Ducks Unlimited. And the fascinating thing is they've been putting these Motus trackers on ducks because they're big enough to carry them. And he had some amazing things to say, but I'll share two of them. The first is they tracked a duck from the Sacramento Wildlife Refuge, let's say, and you'd think when it's flying north to its breeding grounds that it would go straight up to Canada or straight up to Alaska. Well, this duck flew all the way to Iowa on its way up to Alaska from Sacramento. So it's like, we don't really know the pathways that some of these birds go. And undoubtedly, just like what you were sharing, it probably had many other ducks with it on its trip because there was a feeding ground somewhere in Iowa, or I can't actually remember the exact state, but it was like Iowa or Kansas that it went to. Maybe it was Iowa. Iowa, yeah, I think I've confirmed it was Iowa. My memory isn't completely shot. And anyways, so that it zigzagged around before it wound up in Alaska. So the other thing that was truly amazing about what he shared was they can actually track the average speed of these migrants. Just like you did, we put in the information on the curlews. They're flying somewhere around 35 miles an hour as an average. Well, the ducks apparently, when you see a duck take off and fly over the marsh, it's probably going 35 or 40 miles an hour, but they can average 50, 60, and even 70 miles an hour on their migration flights, which probably means once they get up to speed and they got up to a high enough altitude, there's less resistance and they can really cover quite a few miles. So that was one of the things. The second thing is on the sparrows. Well, there's a program at Sonoma State called Soundscapes to Landscapes. And Wendy Shakowitz, who was our president previous to me, a couple presidents back, has really worked with putting microphones in colonies such as tricolored blackbirds and determining the exact cycle of when the eggs are laid, when the hatchlings hatch, and when they fledge, based on the sounds coming from the marsh. So Soundscapes to Landscapes has then been putting microphones all through Sonoma County and perhaps even more than that and trying to record all the birds that happen to be resident birds there. It'd be great for a breeding bird atlas, for example. But they're starting to spread out all over the world. And one of my friends who I do climate research with just got back from South Africa, putting microphones all over South Africa game refuges to record the species that are there. So it's great news that so much work is being done so quickly, and we're going to have tons of information available to us, especially when we lose our hearing and our eyesight, we can still be birders, right? So, and then finally, the other point I want to make is about white-crowned sparrows. We had a specialist come and talk to us from I think he was from Humboldt, who tracked, or Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz, one of the two. Anyways, he discovered that breeding white-crowned sparrows, when they fly to their wintering grounds, usually don't fly there with other sparrows from their breeding grounds. They just disperse all over the place. But a single white-crowned sparrow will return year after year to the same wintering ground, which is really fascinating, because then you can begin to figure out where are these wintering grounds where we need to preserve habitat too. And you know, the agency that I'm aware of that really does great work is I call them ABC Birding, but it's American Bird Conservancy, ABC. Yeah, and they're doing fantastic work at trying to do what you're saying, tracking where birds are, and then setting aside critical habitat, you know, to preserve especially endangered species throughout all of the Western Hemisphere. It's a great group, and I try to plug them every time I get. So your talk fit right into that. It's fantastic. Other questions from the audience?
I was curious about that device that was something you could put in your yard to record
Yes.
things were going by. How would you go about obtaining one, purchasing one, or renting one, or however you do it?
So one of our guests, I'm not sure if you could hear his question, but he wonders where do we go about obtaining one of the backyard Modus, little mini Modus towers.
Terra?
Is it Terra?
Yeah.
Can you repeat
Oh,
that?
Terra.
Yes.
Yes, it's terralistens.com, TerraListens.com, and I'll put that in the chat here for those online. But if you just do an internet search for the Terra project, TERRA, it should come right up. And it says hear bird song with bird identification. So if you go to their website, you can order directly from them. And they just started actually manufacturing these things and shipping them as of 6 months ago, I think. So you can actually purchase them and put them in your yard right now.
Yeah, besides the Terra device, there's another device that I have that I'm sure you've heard about, the Haiku box, which it doesn't detect any of the Modus tags, but it does listen to what's in your backyard, and it's on Wi-Fi, and it'll identify what it hears and send you a notification to your phone. So if there's some new vocalization in your neighborhood, it'll notify you, hey, there's a new bird in your backyard. And yeah, Haiku box isn't particularly cheap. It's a few $100s, but if you have a place where you can plug it in, because it needs to be plugged in and it needs to be on Wi-Fi, then you can just set that up in your backyard and it'll listen to what's back there.
I actually had not heard of Haiku box, but thank you for
You haven't heard about that? I read about that in Living Bird. It's probably an old magazine, because I'm only a couple of years behind on my Living Birds. But they're based in Florida, and they use the Cornell to identify the birds, and I think they send the data back to Cornell as well. So.
I have an unscientific question, which is really a mathematical question, which probably can't be answered. But if I were to put one of those up in my yard, how many pings a week can I expect to get? Which is a question of how many tagged birds are going to fly through my area.
Could
So
you,
that's gonna, yes, I did hear that question. How many pings you're gonna get is gonna completely depend on where your yard is and where it is in relation to people who are putting tags on birds. So if you saw that map where all the towers are and you saw them concentrated around the Eastern Great Lakes, there's a ton of bird researchers and also insect and bat researchers out there who are putting more MODIS tags on birds in the east because the tower system is more extensive there, so they can get better data. There are fewer people putting MODIS tags on birds or any other creatures in the western US because we just, until very recently, we've had hardly any towers out here, and we still don't have a great network. We've put a whole bunch of tags on grassland birds in the central western US in the past year or two, and are going to put in hundreds more this year. I know there's a bunch of people putting tags on Swainson's thrushes and other birds up in British Columbia. And those birds, when they migrate, a lot of them will probably come down through California. Every year, there's more and more people getting, starting to put more tags out and starting to do more research projects of various kinds. And so over time, the number of pings will grow. But depending on where the tower is, you could go a whole season without getting a ping, especially if it's just one of these like 250-meter ones where a bird would have to be pretty close to your house in order to ping your device. If you have a souped up, really good, 15 to 20 kilometer tower, I would expect, I can't really speculate because I haven't actually gone online and looked. But you could actually go online and look if you want. All the data is public. If you go to the modis.org website, and I can't tell you exactly how, but if you click enough links, you'll be able to download the actual database of all the MODIS observations. And you could look then for the towers that are in your area and see what kind of traffic they've been getting and what species they've been detecting.
so something that just popped into my mind, which is really relevant, is my son Lucas has really become quite a good birder, and Murray Berner, who's a biologist who lives in our area, when he was about Lucas's age, found a migration pathway in the Blue Ridge Mountains or in the Napa Mountains, where a lot of migrants pass over this one little dip in the mountains. And so Lucas has spent a lot of time trying to find similar migration pathway routes where migrants are coming through. So would those locations be a great place for a MODIS tower? In other words, where there's a concentration of migrants, number one, and it's elevated, number two, so there wouldn't be anything blocking the tower.
Absolutely. Those would be ideal places to put MODIS towers. As long as you've got some kind of, you're going to need some kind of power source to run the tower. You need to hook it up to, that's one of the reasons why it's like good to put it on, like on top of a high school, for example, so that you can plug it in inside the building. And you would need at least reasonably regular access to the place in order to, if the wind blows something over or whatever, you can go up and
So it'd
fix
be
it.
hard to put one up away from buildings and power lines, et cetera. Or
It's more challenging, yes.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons where most of the existing towers are on top of existing buildings.
Are there some that are solar powered?
Yes, you can put solar panels up with a MODIS tower. With all the good and bad that comes with that, in terms of like, is it only solar powered? Is there a battery? Is it going to run during the night? Is it just backup solar power? Like those are all things to ask yourself if you're putting solar power up. That'll also increase the cost. But yes, I have seen Motus towers that have solar panels attached.
I guess we should invest in long extension cords.
There's probably going to be a long extension cord, even in the best of circumstances. Even if you're putting it right on top of your house, there's still going to be a long extension cord involved. So I do see a couple of questions in the chat that I think I should address. One question, is Motus an acronym? I believe it's not. I believe it's actually from the Latin word for motion, if I remember correctly. And then another question, my phone has the Merlin app. Are you saying I can use it to record song? If so, how? What do I do if I have a recorded sound file in the app and I wanted to share it with eBird or whoever? So the answer is yes. Here's what Merlin looks like. It's a little too bright there. I'll try and turn down the screen brightness so that you can see it a little better. So this is what Merlin looks like, and you've got Sound ID right here. And then down here, it says Photo ID. Notice that for me, Sound ID is green because I have downloaded the Sound ID part of the app, and Photo ID is grayed out because I have not downloaded that part. But if I clicked on Photo ID, it would allow me to download the Photo ID part, and then it would ID photos. But I only use it for Sound ID, so I haven't downloaded the Photo ID part. But if I click here on the green, it starts recording right away. It is recording right now, and you can run it for however long you want it, and then you just hit stop. And of course, it'll give you a list of all the birds. It's going to advertise the Great Backyard Bird Count. But it has just made a recording, and this recording is now on my phone. So in order to see it, you can actually
Go to My Sound
tells me there's-
Recordings.
Sorry?
You go to My Sound Recordings.
Right. So from here, if I go back to the home screen of Merlin, down at the bottom, it says My Sound Recordings. And if I click on that, it'll give me a list of my sound recordings. And the most recent one at the top is the recording that I just made, and it has the date and the time there. It'll also list birds that it identified on that recording. In this case, it doesn't have any for the top recording there. But it says when and where I recorded it. And what you can do then is if you click on that recording, you can go right back to it. You can play it again and listen to it again if you want. You can change the location or the date if you want, or the time. You can also delete it if you want. And then this little button right here, this looks a little different on Android and iPhone, but there's this little share icon. And so you can actually share the recording. You can email it to yourself. You can share it to yourself in Google Drive or in another kind of app. And so that's a way to transfer it to your computer. And then once you've got it on your computer, you can send it to other places. I think nowadays you may be able to send it directly from your files on your phone straight to eBird. I haven't done that with a sound recording ever. Done it with photos. So I can't tell you if you can send it straight to your eBird checklist with your phone, but I think you can these days.
Nathan, I always wondered, I do a lot of recording with Merlin just for the birds. Does Cornell take all that information I'm collecting? Does that actually get transferred directly to Cornell, or does that stay on my phone? I always assumed that they get a copy of everything I'm listening to, and they're using that for the research applications. Is that true or is that false?
Currently, it is false.
Okay.
So currently, if you are using Merlin and you're recording something and it shows up on your phone like this, it is only on your phone. And the only way that Cornell would be able to use it is if you upload it to an eBird checklist. So you have to take that extra step of doing that. in order to make it usable for them and have them be able to train Merlin with it or do anything else with it. If Merlin misidentifies something and you know the actual correct identification of the bird, like you're looking at the bird and it's definitely a golden-crowned sparrow, but Merlin called it a white-crowned sparrow, those recordings are actually the most important ones to upload, the ones where Merlin is making mistakes. Because by uploading it and saying, actually, this is a white-crowned sparrow, and I know it was because I saw it, then eventually that'll get ingested into the AI training, and it starts to teach Merlin how to correct its mistakes. Because if it's making that kind of mistake, it's because it's never heard a white-crowned sparrow quite like the one that that you just recorded. So if you want it to be better at recording, at identifying the birds from your neighborhood, upload the bird songs from your neighborhood to eBird with the correct species identification, and that will eventually improve Merlin's accuracy in your neighborhood.
Thank you.
I thought it was really fascinating that people are uploading many more photos than sound recordings. And now with Merlin, you can record it and just send it immediately to eBird. It works pretty seamlessly. So it's a great thing for people to start doing. And on our point counts, even though we know our sounds very well, we usually let Merlin run in the background in case we're focused on one call note or whatever, and are not paying attention to another call note that's behind us. So it's a great sort of fail safe for when you're doing point counts, at least to pick up something that you might have missed.
I see a question in the chat from Roberto asking, what kind of collaboration is Bird Conservancy of the Rockies getting from Mexico? That's a question very dear to my heart. I was just in the first week of January, 4 weeks ago, I was down in Mexico with Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, helping to teach a week-long bird identification workshop to our Mexican partners. So we had about 20 people in the class. They are all working for organizations like CONAMP or graduate students working at various Mexican universities. And a lot of them are doing surveys down there using Bird Conservancy protocol, and we were helping to train them on those protocols. While we were down there, we were working with a professor from one of the universities who, with her students, she was setting up nets, catching grasshopper sparrows and Baird sparrows and putting Modus tags on them. So everything that's happening on this side of the border is happening down there. There's a whole network of sustainable ranching in north central Mexico that is working very closely with Bird Conservancy. You know, there's good news and bad news for Mexico. A lot of grassland is being converted to farmland every year. But a lot of ranchers down there are actually paying a lot of attention to conservation. And some of the habitat is not only in great shape, but also being taken good care of. So there's a lot more to be done, but there's a lot being done in Mexico in the conservation right now.
That's
I
great.
have a question. Can I ask a question?
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wondering, with a lot of the migrations, you have a lot of long distance migration. The Modus towers are going up here in the States. Are they going up in Central America and South America, and are you seeing as much activity or more activity there than here with the Modus towers?
So like I said, 3 years ago, there were very few Modus towers in Mexico. Now there are dozens. Modus towers have the push to create Modus towers throughout the hemisphere has really accelerated in the last couple of years. We're going to need hundreds or thousands more Modus towers to be really comprehensive in this hemisphere. But yes, there are tons of Modus towers going up south of the US border and also in the US. And like I said, Bird Conservancy hopes, they put up about 100 Motus towers in the past 18 months. We hope to put up about another 100 more in the next 1800 months, and the next 18 months, I should say. But even that will not create quite the scale that we really want. So more towers is always better.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that was shared by an earlier presenter is the efforts by many birding groups and birders to train bird guides in South America, Central America, to try to transform their economy into a more eco-friendly economy. And it's a great way, I think, for birding and habitat conservation to really come together and work together to preserve our natural environment. So the more we can actually support countries, including our own, to have some of their economy based on ecotourism, birding groups, plant groups, whatever, I think the more land we're going to set aside, and it's the habitat that's going to be the incredible important factor.
I totally agree.
Any other questions? Did someone hear?
Actually, what do you do with Motus towers over water?
What do we do with Motus towers over water?
I assume you don't have any.
Yeah, right now, there basically aren't any. I mean, I suppose you could put them on oil rigs or ships. But as far as I know, there has been no serious effort to do that. If you actually looked carefully at the Motus map, if you go to motus.org and look carefully at their map, you'll see that, for example, almost the entire Texas coast has a Motus tower every 20 kilometers. So in theory, when migrants come ashore after flying across the Gulf of Mexico in the spring, wherever they hit the Texas coast, they're going to get picked up by one of those towers because the towers are close enough that they have overlapping ranges. Now, that kind of coverage does not extend everywhere across the Gulf Coast or the East Coast. There are stretches of coast on the East Coast and up in Nova Scotia, places like that, where we have complete coverage for a coastline. So if you have complete coverage for a coastline, and we also have, I should say, a lot of the towers that have been going in Mexico are on the Yucatan coast. So in theory, what we could eventually get is we could pinpoint when and where a bird left the Yucatan and when and where it hit the other side of the Gulf of Mexico. We wouldn't know exactly where it went in between, but those 2 points would give us a distance and a time and tell us a lot about what the bird was doing over the water.
Thank you.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, Nathan, this is incredible work. And it's beyond me. I didn't do a very good introducing you. Good job introducing you, but my Merlin ID picked up that there was a University of Colorado professor of rhetoric and writing that was speaking. So it's really doing pretty well. But
that's creepy.
But I said that tongue in cheek, obviously, but what's amazing to me is that a college professor who teaches writing and rhetoric has the time and energy to put into his avocation of birding all the work that you're doing, because you came and spoke with us a couple years back on chasing the mysterious owl. I can't even pronounce it, whatever owl from
Mysterious owl.
Yeah, there you go. And that was a great conversation. So keep up your work and give up writing and continue with presentations about birds and saving habitat.
He didn't show us where that bird was in that picture. Remember at the very beginning?
Oh, was there a bird in the very beginning that you were gonna?
That picture of the.
Oh, you didn't see the bird in the original picture. Sorry.
Oh,
I think
yeah,
I
that's
did.
right. Denise thinks she
Well,
found it.
My
Here you go.
There it is. Whoops, sorry. Need to go all the way back to the top. My animation was not working quite right. Can you see the bird in the picture right now?
Think so. Oh,
Maybe we got it closer. Yeah.
Denise's eyes are pretty
Yeah.
good. Oh, right there, huh?
like it's laying down like a night.
Oh, wow.
Ah, okay.
Is it a nighthawk?
It is a nighthawk.
Nightjar.
It's a nightjar.
Yeah.
So now can you see it?
Yeah.
Even knowing it's there, it's not very visible.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So did you get your
Yeah.
phone to work?
I'm
Put
looking
your
at it,
phone
but I
back
don't
up
see
there
it.
if you can.
I don't see a bird.
Oh, I do see it now. But it was kind of cool. The phone can actually see it.
Well, this is actually not a real app. You
Uh-huh.
know, when I show people doing this,
Oh, I see.
this is actually just I mocked this up to show what maybe phones in the future could do.
Ah,
This kind of visual pattern matching and actually picking a bird out from the background. Currently, I do not know of an app that can do this, but I would bet that if somebody wanted to make an app that could do this, they could make that app right now using modern technology. We have the technology to create what I just showed, but as far as I know, we don't actually have it right now.
you know, what's interesting is Lightroom. If you process any photos using Lightroom, now it used to be you had to paint in the bird because Lightroom couldn't find it. Now you just draw a big circle around it and boom, it
It
finds the
finds it.
outline of the bird. So maybe we're getting closer than you think.
That's AI right there. That's
There you go.
modern AI.
Wow. Well, fantastic. Any last minute questions for Nathan before he gets to go to bed?
It's not that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you very much. It's awesome.
That
Yeah.
was great.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to speak to you.
Well, keep in touch and hopefully some of us will see you at the WFO conference coming up or at the Central Valley Birders. If you keep going to those, those are both great conferences in San Diego. It's not a bad place to be. So
All right.
I'll just remind our audience that our next meeting is March the 14th. The program is going to be on the Bluebird Recovery Program at the Benicia Public Library. So the April meeting, I think, will be back in Napa, as will the May meeting. So come in person and you get to have coffee and cookies and the camaraderie of this group that's here. So thank you very much, Nathan, for sharing it. Say hi to Will Anderson for us. Is he still, has he graduated yet?
He has gotten both his bachelor's and his master's and is now working on his PhD at the University of Colorado, working on house wrens.
Oh my gosh, well, good. That's fantastic. So he was a good birding buddy of my son Lucas, who is graduating this year from high school. So maybe I don't think he's thought of going to Boulder yet. He wants to stay in California, but we'll see what happens.
Fair enough.
You
Fair
never
enough.
know. Yeah, out of state tuition. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming and joining us. We hope you enjoyed the talk. It was really fascinating, and we'll have you back again before too long. So keep birding and keep coming up with more sensational topics for your presentations. It was really awesome. Great.
I'd love to come back. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good.